I'm going to give you my thoughts on the best weapons for Star Citizen Alpha 314, and we're starting right now. Thank you so much to all the supporters that make this channel possible. I am Subliminal, and this is a Star Citizen's Loadout Guide. 314 has come and completely switched up the game revolving around weapons. In this video, I'm going to cover each weapon archetype, discuss pros and cons, give my opinions on its role in combat, and list my favorite weapons in that archetype. And there's even a small rant about our ballistic problem and my recommendations on how to fix it at the end. This video is brought to you by Game Glass. Stay tuned to find out more about Game Glass and my personal shard. There are a few archetypes I will not be covering, that being scatterguns of all types, because their role hasn't really changed since Alpha 313. It should be noted because of the increased TTK, they aren't nearly as lethal for HH takedowns. Also, C788 ballistic cannons have been nerfed so hard it's best to just forget that they were even good. Fringe cases like the tachyon cannons that are not working as intended, as well as the mass driver railgun that hasn't lived up to our expectations since it was nerfed too hard years ago. Instead, we'll be focusing on the main aspects of what the developers want us to focus on during this patch: energy, ballistic, and distortion weapons in both repeater and cannon variants. Let's get my least favorite of the three damage types out of the way first: distortion weapons. Distortion weapons in 314 are pretty much useless, and it doesn't really have anything to do with changes to them, rather changes to all ship shields and hulls. See, shield health has been reduced across the board, and subsequently hull HP has been raised. What you'll notice your first time getting into combat is that you'll take down an opponent's shields pretty quickly, and then spend much more time fighting with the hull to get a kill. Despite that, altogether this is a much longer TTK than previous patches. For anyone who doesn't know, distortion weapons don't do any hull damage. Instead, they tear down shields and have a chance of causing component damage that could power off a ship. This means by using distortions in 314, you are sacrificing potential hull damage to take down weak shields slightly faster. This is not the way you want to go. Until distortion weapons can be used to more frequently disable ships, I don't think they'll have a place on my ship. This goes for both cannons and repeaters. Now, let's talk about ballistics. We'll start with repeaters. This includes Gatlings. The pros to ballistic repeaters are fast fire rate, long range, high velocity, shield penetration, high DPS, and low stealth emissions. That's a lot of pros, you might say, so there must be a ton of cons. Nope, just a couple. Really low ammo count and a low alpha damage. If you thought 5,000 rounds on the Revenant was too low, it now has 240. If my math is correct, that's 16 seconds of fire before you need to rearm. That is not an error, this is by design. So, if you want to have an advantage in PvP, it's best to equip a full set of Gatlings, get a kill, and head to either Grimhex or an outpost to rearm. Okay, this is where I was going to insert my rant. However, I went too long and it ruins the flow, so I've added it to the end. Check the chapters below if that's all you came to see. Anyway, some specific ballistic repeaters that I would choose are the GT series in sizes 1 and 3, and the Revenant Gatling in size 4. You can mix these with energy repeaters and use the ballistic ammo sparingly, although this means you will probably need to rearm after every group BHRT mission. Since the lower TTK does not outweigh the rearm time, I cannot recommend using this to grind out for UEC and PvE bounty hunting missions. However, this is a viable option for PvP, as the rearm isn't that big of a deal. For the most part, ballistic cannons suffer from the same pitfalls and triumphs as repeaters. Pros are long range, ability to penetrate shields, high DPS, low stealth emissions, and super high alpha damage. Its cons are, of course, severely reduced ammo count, slow fire rate, and slow velocity. With all of this in mind, these weapons are great for taking out ships that are larger than you. Because of their slow projectile speed, they will not be ideal for opponents that are smaller and more nimble than you. There is, however, one good trait to the ballistic cannons over the repeaters, and that's having a full 60 seconds before you need to rearm. This would be much more viable for PvP as long as the weapons fit into the scenario you're in. As for specific ballistic cannons, I would recommend to stick with deadbolts across the board. They all have the same stats except stealth, so the logical option would be to go with the stealthiest. Game Glass is Star Citizen's ultimate companion that can run on almost any tablet or smartphone. There are free shards for social, everyday flight, and even combat. Try Game Glass for free today using the link in the description. Plus, GlassPass subscribers get beta access to the all-new Forge, where you can create and even share your very own custom shards for Star Citizen or any game. Check out my latest version for 3.14. If you sign up for GlassPass, use code Subliminal to get 5% off. Time to discuss energy weapons. We'll start with repeaters. Some pros are projectile speed, fast fire rate, long range, and of course, infinite ammo. The cons are low alpha damage and slightly lower damage or DPS compared to other archetypes. These weapons are great for grinding PvE bounty hunting missions for money, because they don't require rearming. Because of their fire rate and projectile speed, they are also great for fighting targets that are smaller and more nimble than you. Although it's not my area of expertise, from my experience, these seem to be the best overall weapons for PvP if you don't want to deal with rearming. As with most weapon archetypes this patch, within them they all have pretty much the same stats, except for stealth of course. However, because I made my decisions on what weapons were better prior to looking at any stats, I have to recommend the NDB Neutron repeaters for size 3 and below. I prefer these over CF series and attritions, but there's no difference that I can see within the data listed on the DPS calculator. This is just how I feel after using them in 3.14. It could be the sound, pretty colors, or maybe something not listed on Urkel. As for size 4 or higher, attritions would be better due to the lower emissions, but I'm not sure it's worth the Alpha UEC to replace CF series for them. We've got one more archetype left, and I've saved it for last since it's my favorite: energy cannons. Some pros are high alpha damage, infinite ammo, and a lower capacitor energy draw per shot. Some cons are slow projectile speed, slow fire rate, and slightly lower range. Looking at this, you'd think these weapons were well balanced, or even just okay. You might ask yourself, given that the DPS is the same, why would you trade fast projectile speed and fire rate for slower projectile speed and slow fire rate? Personally, I was reluctant to try cannons at first on my second day of testing in the 3.14 PTU, but during my live stream, viewers were being persistent in having me try them. I tried the FL series cannons on the Gladius and proceeded to have the lowest TTK I'd had all patch. At the time, I had no idea why, because I had decided to stay away from the stats as to not skew my opinions. Because I had tried each archetype, now was a better time than any to see why the cannons felt so good. I compared the stats on the DPS calculator and came to the conclusion that since I was fighting slower moving predictable targets in PvE, the cannons must have been better because of their high alpha damage. I continued believing this to be the only reason until I did more research while writing this script. See, the DPS calculator is currently missing capacitor info. Urkel is developing their version 3 of the site now to add the new info that 3.14 brings with it. To find this info, I had to go back to the old hardpoint.io. Veterans might remember this site as its best source for data prior to the existence of the DPS calculator. It hadn't been actively updated since 3.9. However, the developer has returned with some changes for 3.14. Here we can see the real reason why my TTK dropped. I was able to fire for twice as long, therefore delivering twice the damage. Now this isn't without its pitfalls. Because of the 700 meter projectile speed of the cannons, trying to hit a target that is over 700 meters away is a crapshoot. However, if you are patient and you wait for your target to get within a range that is optimal, these are a lot of fun. I even prefer using cannons in larger ships while shooting smaller targets, which makes no sense. Out of all of the laser cannons available for size 3 and under, by a narrow margin I prefer the FL series. After trying them all, I couldn't tell why I preferred these over the rest, but after doing some research on the DPS calculator, I found out that they don't have any spread. This seems like a mistake and it may be fixed in an upcoming patch. Plus, they're kinda stealthy, win-win. As for size 4 and up, I have to go with MXAs because they are actually quite stealthy as well. The Vanguard series does have a laser cannon, however it is bespoke to the Warden. Previously, I thought you had to buy a Warden just to get these cannons. However, recently it has been brought to my attention that you can rent a Warden, apply the MVSAs to your Sentinel or Harbinger, and keep the MVSAs after the rental expires. You'll lose them, however, if you do a character reset. I understand the Warden has bespoke weapons and lore, however, I don't think that it's right in this new meta to not have a standard laser cannon available for all Vanguards. I think they should make a new bespoke weapon for the Vanguard and make the MVSAs available in stores. Alright, it's time for that rant I promised. These changes have come because CIG is trying to create variety in combat. The idea is to give players a choice other than just using ballistic Gatlings or full energy builds. They are trying to reduce the homogeneous builds we tend to use and introduce depth and choices for different scenarios. This change is a good beginning and a step towards players exploring builds that mix ballistics with energy, ballistics with distortion, distortion with energy, or full energy builds. Basically builds that can be tailored to a designed playstyle or situation. I really do stand behind what they are trying to accomplish with this change, but there is one fundamental problem that they did not foresee. 16 seconds of ballistic Gatling fire is enough time to kill at least one player. Some of you might say, subliminal, why would someone equip a full loadout that will run out of ammo in just seconds? The answer is because it's by far the fastest way to kill another player. See, players will always choose the path of least resistance. What this does is completely ruins organic PvP. If you see an enemy coming at you with such a build, you can run, die, fight back, almost certainly resulting in your death, or avoid fire until they run out of ammo. The latter seems to be a viable option at first, but what is to keep the player from just running away? Why would they stay after they've depleted all their ammo? I think this is a huge problem, and I even offered a solution on Spectrum that was read live during SCL. Take a look.
And I still have over half my ammunition left.
Have you considered reducing the amount of shield damage that ballistics do in exchange for higher hull damage? I think that's probably because of the big 3-second takedown builds that we're seeing people just alpha striking with Gatlings and.
Yeah, though that doesn't. So, firstly, that kind of approach is contradicting what we want in the general idea of like energy weapons versus ballistics. But the other part of that is that our weapons, they do not have a shield damage property. It's the other way around. Our shields have a damage type property, and every weapon dishes out damage of a certain type, right? Can be distortion, can be physical, energy, and there's a couple of others. And a shield has absorption and resistance values that counter that. So even if we wanted to do that, we couldn't do it right away. So this is nothing we can do for 3.14.
Please note that I truly admire Yogi. He is one of the best devs we have, and he literally looks like these live streams interrupt his play session. He wears his track IR, has VKB sticks, and a jacket with the Legacy Fleet logo. Isn't that a player organization? Is this dev part of this org? Anyway, this answer to my question does not address the issue that caused me to ask the question in the first place. What can be done to eliminate such builds? The reality is there's no way he could have known that I'm well aware of how long implementing something like this would take. I would expect no longer than 3 to 6 months if they miraculously made it a priority. And I still don't know if this is something that they've considered or not. This idea of physical doing physical damage and energy doing damage to energy is not new and can be found in other sci-fi games and movies. I don't think this is an area where CIG needs to reinvent the wheel. Some of you might be thinking that maybe the upcoming physicalized armor feature will fix this issue. It is certainly possible it might. However, I think instead of us using the term TTK, we'll just be complaining about time to disable. Another common thing I see is people asking for them to raise the ammo count to X level. This will not fix the problem. It will only make it worse. Ballistics will become the only viable weapon and become the opposite of what they are trying to achieve. So even though CIG had the best intentions, here's the state of weapon archetypes. Ballistics are too powerful and have just enough ammo to kill most players, so PvPers either use this to their advantage or, like Moist Noodle and other streamers showcased here, stop using them because it's cheesy and it doesn't promote any use of tactics.
Oh, he's gone full ballistics as well.
Ballistics low.
See what I mean? Like, where are the tactics, bruh? There's literally no tactics. You just go full ballistic, daka, and that's it.
As for PvE, there isn't enough ammo to kill more than a couple of VHR2 targets, so it's not practical at all. Distortion weapons are not worth reducing hull damage potential, and since disabling is rare and even impossible to some ships, they don't have a purpose. And energy weapons are in a great spot, but are outclassed in PvP by cheesy ballistic builds. As far as mixed builds go, they can be great for PvP if a full Gatling build makes you uncomfortable. As for PvE, the slightly lower TTK does not outweigh the time it takes to rearm. So after all of this, we're all still just using the same energy builds we were using in 3.13. But don't worry, they just added 3 new ammo types to the roadmap. This month's ship giveaway is the Aegis Redeemer, brought to you by Game Glass. There are 10 ways to enter, each giving you more points and a greater chance to win. To enter, visit subliminal.gg/giveaway. Pro tip, the redeemed Twitch channel point rewards can be done once per live stream. If you enjoy my channel, there are so many ways to support it, ranging from free options like Prime Gaming subscriptions and sending Alpha UEC in the verse, sub-club subscriptions, merch, and more generous forms of support. Head over to subliminalchannel.tv to learn how. Your support in all forms makes this channel possible. Even your viewership, liking, and subscribing goes a long way. To continue watching, here's a video I think you may like. Here's a video YouTube thinks you may like. And until next time, citizens, I'll see you in the verse.